Tim Jordan, Haverhill City Councilor, is running for his second term here for the City of Haverhill. We're very pleased to have him with us today to answer some questions for the voters. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
I'd like to ask you, what do you think the biggest difference is when you happen to run your first time, and what have you learned in your first term, full term as a city councilor, that now you know you're able to apply those benefits to a more experienced run for your second term?
Sure, I think partly you've done it before, so you have a bit of a ground game off the bat. Certainly a lot of in fact, almost all of the people that let me put up a lawn sign, for example, 2 years ago, that was the first group of people I reached out to this time around. You have an idea kind of what to expect as far as from a fundraising standpoint, what do I need in the way of door hangers, what do I need for lawn signs, planning on doing mailers, all of that. So yeah, there's definitely certainly some value in having done it before, that you're better prepared than the first time around.
It's the practical stuff, I guess,
sure.
For a campaign.
Yep.
Let me ask you this, though. When we're talking about when people initially tend to run for office, I find when I'm talking with them, almost to a person, they'd like to be able to provide this for the voters or this program or this, but then once they get elected, the budget constraints and budget considerations say, whoa.
Sure.
We'd like to all do that, but we can't afford to do that. So of these series of 5 different things that you'd like to go and advocate for, that you have advocated for, we can afford to do one. Have you found that to be the case largely?
Maybe a little bit, but not quite so.
Okay.
I think that there's a bit of a misnomer that we don't have money to do lots of things. I think that many years ago that was the case. If you want to go back to the early 2000s,
sure.
We're in a much different financial situation today. The economy's obviously done very well. For years, Chairman Dempsey, brought millions of dollars in the way of money for hail relief, which in some cases we used for that, some cases we really didn't pay down the hail debt. But the moment we have over $12.1 million was certified last year in free cash. Over the last 2 years, it's gone from 8 million to 10 million to 12 million. So on some point, I guess I don't accept the premise that we can't afford to do lots of things. I think we actually can. I think the critical thing is being prudent about how we do use the money. For example,
I guess the mayor had said that, I don't want to take your example, but
sure.
The mayor had said that about $12.5 million in free cash, and that's okay,
Yep.
but about half of that's committed, but you have $5 million in reserve funds too, so go ahead.
Sure, so I think that's a bit of a, I don't want to say shell game, but we heard that last year too. So last year the free cash was at $10 million, and we're told that we're going to use $5 million of that free cash, which based on that math would mean we're going to have $5 million this year. Not so. We did use the $5 million, but I think we're not really accounting for all the income that's coming in. So when we were told we were going to use $5 million of the $10 million in free cash the previous year, instead of dropping to 5, we actually went up to 12. So the point that I was bringing up earlier is the fact that we didn't do the Haverhill High School track, complete new track, at the same time that we did the multipurpose / softball field. Part of the argument was we couldn't afford to do it. The school committee originally had in the budget the previous year. The mayor determined they couldn't afford to do it. The total cost was going to be about $1 million for that. The reality is that we could have, because our total reserves ballooned from 10 million to 12 million. And then talking to the Haverhill High School athletic director, he estimates we would have saved roughly $500,000 to $600,000 had we done both projects at the same time. So that's an example where I guess arbitrarily saying we can't afford something when you know you need to do it anyways. And in that case, we used the exact same design team that designed the multi-purpose field, that's designed the track, and the exact same construction team. So we only had to mobilize their equipment once as opposed to twice. That's what's costing us that difference of, again, several $100,000. So I think we have to be smarter about how we use the resources that we do have to be really prudent and responsible to our taxpayers.
So that comes naturally to you, given your background as a financial analyst and financial planner, no?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I help my clients, invest for their retirement, invest for their children's education. So I certainly understand you have to live within a budget and understand budgeting. But I don't feel that we are investing enough in our city, and that's something that I've been advocating for. And thankfully, I think partly my efforts in leading the charge for that new high school track, it's happening, advocating that we finally replace the majority of the Haverhill High School pool, which has had lots of leaks and other problems. That's now happening. So I think it's, again, the preventative maintenance is critical, and I think that's an area we've done a really poor job for an awful long time. I use the analogy with a car. You know, I know you're a big car guy.
Yep.
You can save money by not changing your oil or doing routine maintenance. You'll save money for a while.
Yep.
Eventually, you'll seize your engine, and replacing the engine is going to cost you a lot more money than doing the routine maintenance along the way. That's kind of how I feel like what's been happening for a long time, particularly with our school buildings.
You know, it's interesting that former longtime city councilor Michael Bresnahan, and who was a former mayoral candidate as well, that was a hallmark of his campaign. And it's that was several years ago, and it's a little troubling that that's still part of the discussion right now. I mean, if we're talking about expenditures on a wish list, what's at the top of the wish list that you think should be on there that's not given enough attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically for like a lot of the school buildings and I guess other city buildings in general. Tom Granneman, school committee candidate, he did a study, I think it was called the APA, I think it's the American Physical Plant Association, that had for the square feet of your school buildings, you should have X number of maintenance workers and X numbers of custodians.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the matrix that based on I want to say was 1.5 million square feet, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, that they had 5 ranking levels. You know, top, you know, number 1 was like the best ranking and so on down the list. The bottom level, a level 5, was unkempt neglect. And at unkempt neglect, the bottom, we would have 9 full-time maintenance workers. This past year, we had 4. The mayor's original budget proposed adding 1 to go up to 5. I advocated we get up to 10. I thought, can't we be at least just better than unkempt neglect year 1 and get to the middle of the pack by year 2? We got a little bit more. We didn't get nearly enough, in my opinion. That's partly why I voted against the budget, because we didn't get to where we should be. But that's critical because, again, I think you're costing the taxpayers. We're being penny wise and pound foolish. You're costing the taxpayers a lot more money in the long run because these school buildings are literally falling apart decades earlier than they should. And that's just, again, to me, fiscally irresponsible.
Let me ask you this question: as far as methodology, perhaps to be able to gain some monies, perhaps of the very things that you're talking about being able to do. And it's kind of a sensitive subject, but I'd like to know what your take is on it. And that is that there are over 21,000 parcels of property in the city of Haverhill. From a taxation standpoint, there are 840 properties of those 21,000, some odd more properties that are tax exempt. They pay no property taxes at all. Now that includes city buildings, that includes places of worship, synagogues, churches, so on. But then there's a whole host of other buildings and properties that are tax exempt. Maybe they're 501c3 or whatever their status happens to be. And in other communities, they have a thing called payment in lieu of taxes, where they don't pay a tax that they normally would be subject to, but they make a contribution to the community in which their organization is located in, because they do benefit from fire protection, police protection, city roads, snow plowing, things of that type. What is your take on that in being able to solicit or being able to ask some of these folks, many of which come to work in town for the organization, but they don't live here, they go elsewhere? That was, very interesting dynamic. Just interested to see what your take is on that.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the first place that I'd be looking to go. I mean, you mentioned like a lot of 501c3 organizations, and I know, like talking to, for example, like Tracy Fuller, executive director of the YMCA. They don't pay, but you look at what they do for our community, right? I mean, we have so many kids, high school kids, middle school kids who go there on a routine basis after school. They're providing a quality of life. They're providing, the Haverhill Boys and Girls Club, where they have tutors there that are working with these kids. So are they paying taxes? No, but are they absolutely adding to the fabric and the quality of our life in our city? Definitely. Particularly for some of those more, I guess you'd say, at-risk kids that otherwise left to their own devices and not having maybe a parent's working 2 jobs, or they're not at home. Would they be getting their homework done? Would they be on the path to success that hopefully some of those organizations are helping to put our children, versus a path to maybe doing the things that they shouldn't be, which is putting more stress and pressure on, quite honestly, an overworked and underfunded police department.
Very good. That tells the backstory in that circumstance, I guess. Very good. Tim Jordan, running for re-election in your second term as Haverhill City Councilor. Wish you the best of luck in the upcoming election.
Thank you very much, Frank. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Tim. We hope that this program has been a point of reference for you. And until next time, my name is Frank Novak, and thanks very much for watching. And remember to vote on Election Day, Tuesday, November 5th.